you're following along at home, go ahead and put in the comments there that you can see me, you can hear me. There we go. All right, looks like things are starting to load up here. I see Phil Williams has joined. Hey there, Phil. All right, let's get this show from, and I am happy to be here with you this evening to kick off our first session of scouting at home. You Cub Scouts out there. So what we've got here is my little home headquarters for scouting here in my house. So we'll be doing some more programs like this over the next few weeks, but tonight we're going to do something that's I think fun for me to do, but also fun for our scouts that can join us at home and learn some knots. So this is going to be a Cub Scout knot lesson for all Cub Scout levels, so Tigers on up. It's going to complete some requirements for a few different adventures for Cub Scouts, including the Call of the Wild for wolves, Bear Necessities for bears, and then Scouting Adventures for our Arrow of Light Scouts and Weeblo Scouts. But since this is a scouting meeting, we want to keep our traditions alive, so let's begin tonight with the Scout Law. So I'm going to stand up here. And if you can join me with your Cub Scout sign, we'll say a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent, too. This is something new for all of us, so if anything goes wrong, please just throw a comment into the box there and we'll try and take care of it. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So tonight, like I said, we're going to learn a few different knots, including the overhand knot, the square knot, the bowline, the 2 half hitches, and the taut-line hitch. So we got a full plate ahead of us. We're going to be using the edge method because that's the way we do things in scouting. It's a very effective teaching technique. So edge stands for explain, demonstrate, guide, and then enable. So I'll explain to you what we're going to be tying and how it's done, what it's used for. And then I'll kind of demonstrate what the knot looks like step by step. Then we'll undo the knot, we'll tie it again, and we'll kind of guide you through that process as you kind of take it over into your own hands at home. And then the enable part is when you practice this at home and you figure out uses all around your home life, on your scouting adventures, and the different ways that you become more proficient in tying knots on your own. I'm going to teach you kind of where the knots kind of came from and what they're most commonly used for, but you can use all these knots in many, many different ways. And I'm sure you'll find some creative ways to do it. Hopefully you'll practice those while you're at camp with us this summer. We can't wait until the summer camp time. All right, so some things you're going to need for this evening. You're going to need a 3-foot length of rope. I've got a couple of them here. 3 feet is about the right length. It's going to be long enough that you can tie our longer knots that have bigger loops, but it's not so long that you're going to get it so tangled up and hard to deal with. I've actually got a second one here so I can demonstrate our knots that are a little bit closer up, and you can see the 2 different colors I've got here. And you're also going to want something to tie your knot around, whether it's the leg of a chair. We're going to use my chair back here, whether it's around your wrist, maybe it's around your little brother. Whatever you can find something to tie around, it's going to be good. But for some of these knots, you're going to have something that it can tie around. It's not just on itself. All right, let's begin with our wolf knots. And these are for our wolf scouts and our tiger scouts, but everybody can follow along. And that's going to be the overhand knot and the square knot. So let's begin with the overhand knot. This is about as easy as it gets. I'm going to switch us over to my close-up view so you can see my hands. Here we go. All right, so we've got our rope here. The overhand knot is about as easy as it gets. It's probably the one that you tie over and over with your hands just when you're practicing with a piece of rope. Very easy. What you're going to do is you're going to take the end of this rope, and you can see the end of it we're going to call the working end because we're going to work with that one. The second one, the second part of this rope is going to be called the standing end. So if I have my rope here, you can see my working end and my standing end. So this standing end isn't going to do very much. It's just going to kind of stand there all lazy-like while I work with my working end. So for the overhand knot, it's really a two-step thing. One, you take your working end, you bring it down next to the standing end, and you cross over it. That's step one. Step two is now you can see this little loop that we've made. We're going to tuck the working end of that rope right through that hole and pull it tight. That's step two. All right. So this overhand knot can be used for all kinds of things. If you're just kind of marking the end of a rope, it puts a little bunch on the end of there. You might use it to stop other knots if you don't want them to slip out. So sometimes I just tie this into the end of the rope so I know that the end of it's not going to slip out for any other knots that I'm tying. You can kind of see it looks like a little pretzel here. Alright, so that was kind of explaining what the knot is and how to tie it. I demonstrated how you tie it. Now let's do it together one more time. So if I pulled it apart, we're going to take the end again, called the working end. We're going to pull it down next to the standing end and cross over. And then step two, tuck that working end through that loop that we've just made. And that's all there is to it. That's the overhand knot. Awesome. All right, let's move on to our second knot of the night. This is called the square knot. It is the canonical, the example knot of scouting. You know, when you have all of your scouting knots on your uniform as you grow up in scouting, these are all square knots for the most part. It's one of the most useful knots that you can have because it's how you can tie two pieces of rope together. So I've got my two ropes here. Typically they're going to be the same size, which is really, really close if you're tying the square knot. And they're going to join these two knots together so that if I pull both ends, they don't come apart. And that can be used to either secure two ropes together to make it longer, or if you need to tie something to your backpack and you've just got some extra rope left over, you can tie a square knot in it so it stays together. Lots of different uses for the square knot, but its primary use is just to join two ropes so that they won't come apart. Now this is again a very easy knot. There's only a couple different steps to it. I'm going to teach you with these two different colors ropes so that it's easier to follow along on what's your right and your left. But you can also tie this with just one rope by using both ends. So maybe I'd pull both of these ends together. I could tie these two ends together and make a loop, make myself a little necklace or something. But let's start with those two ropes here. Here we go. The first step is to take your right hand. So we're going to take the working end of the right hand, pass it over the left and around. Now you can see the one in my left hand here is a different color. I went right hand over and around. Now I'm going to go, I went right hand over and around. Now I'm going to go left hand over and around. If I pull those tight, that creates my square knot. You can see how it's kind of square like this. You can also make sure that your knot is right by looking at the two ends of the rope. They should be coming out in opposite ways from each other, so one going this way and one going this way, and both kind of along the same line. So one's not on top of the knot, one's on the bottom of the knot. Nope, they're both on top. All right, let's go through that again. Again, the way that we remember, step by step. You go right hand over and around, going around that left one. You go left hand over and around, and then pull it tight. Awesome. So the way that my dad taught me this knot when I was back in Cub Scouts, the way, again, I remember it every single time, is you go right over left and around, left over right and around, and then pull tight. Now let me demonstrate the power of this knot. You can see I only have a little bit of tail sticking out of both ends of here. But if I pull on the standing ends, these long pieces on the other side, and I pull really tight, you can see that that knot is not coming apart. All right? Very useful. So the harder I pull, the tighter that knot gets. But even if I pull it really, really tight, the mark of a good and well-tied knot is that it is easy to untie. So if I just pull these two kind of loops apart, it comes apart super easy. Now I mentioned before that you can do this with just one rope. So we can take my left and my right here for the same color rope here. And we'll do that together again one last time. Remember, right over left and around. And then left over right and around. I pull that tight. Like I said before, that just made myself a really cool necklace that I can wear over my scout uniform here and always have a piece of rope at the ready. Fantastic. Do we have any questions on our overhand knot or a square knot? Fantastic. I'm going to share a couple extra resources at the end of this lesson so you can keep practicing at home. One of them is 3dknots.com, and that's another great resource for showing how these knots come together, many more than what I'm going to be able to teach you here tonight. All right, let's move on to our bear knot. Remember, that one that we just did, the overhand knot and the square knot, once you practice that and you can show your parent or your den leader that you can tie both the overhand knot and the square knot, then you will have completed requirement number 5 for the wolf adventure Call of the Wild. All right, let's move on to our bear knot, which is the bowline. B for bear, B for bowline. Now I'm going to switch over to our other view again here so you can see my face a little bit bigger, and we'll angle this down a little bit so that you can see the chair. All right, so the bowline. The bowline is an aquatics knot, actually. It's or a boating knot. It comes from the term bowline, so or bow or bow of the boat. So this would be a knot that you could use on the bow of your boat or the front of your boat to tie it off to something. It's a very strong knot, so you can tie it around something on the dock, and your boat's not going to go anywhere. It's also very helpful in non-aquatic situations. In fact, it used to be used for climbing situations as well to keep you safe and connected to whatever you're climbing with. We use other knots for that now, but it's still a very useful knot to make a loop and to hold onto whatever you're tying around. So let's kind of go through it here. For this knot, you need to have something to tie around. So for this example, I'm going to use the straight up and down part of my chair here. I'm going to take the working end of my rope, and I'm going to kind of demonstrate this by pulling that working end around and back towards me. So now I have my working end and my standing end. The working end, again, is the end of the rope that I'm going to be doing all the work with, and the standing one is being lazy and just kind of standing there. And it's the long one that goes off to the ground here. Now in order to tie the bowline, you're going to put a little loop in the standing end, all right? So I'm going to twist this standing end so I'll make a little hole like this. So I've got the long part of the standing end coming up and going underneath to make that little hole. That's all you're going to have to do with the standing end. The rest of it's going to be done with the working end here. You're going to take the working end and go out of the hole So coming up from the bottom, then you're going to take that working end and go underneath the standing end, bring that back up, and go right back into that hole where it came out of the first time. When I pull that tight, then I've got a loop around my chair here, and if I pull on the standing end here, you can see that's not going anywhere. If I was the boat here and I was connected to this end, I'm not going anywhere. Let's do that a little bit closer up on the close-up camera so you can see what that looks like in the end. Here we are. All right, again, you're going to want to tie this around something, so I've got my cup here. If I take the working end and go around my cup, here's my working end. There you go, now you can see it. Here's my standing end. Like I said before, I'm going to flip the standing end up underneath itself to make that little hole. And now my working end, we're going to come out of that hole, go around the standing end, and back into the hole. Easier way to remember that is with a little phrase that I learned when I was learning this knot. I think of the end of this rope, the working end, as a little fox. I've got a hole, and then this big long piece is going to be a big long tree. So the fox comes to the hole, goes around the tree, and back into the hole. See that? So here's what the knot looks like. I'll pull it off of my cup here. Here's what the knot looks like when you're done. You've got whatever you're tying it around. So that's going to be inside the loop here. And then I've got this little bit here that kind of looks like a tongue sticking out. You see? Looks like a tongue. And that's where my tree or my standing end sticks out of all the way down. Again, if I pull tight on that tree, on that standing end, it pulls the knot tight, but this loop, it doesn't slip. So I can tie that around anything I want to, and it's not going to slip. But again, what's the mark of a good knot? Can anybody comment in the Facebook thing here? How do you tell a knot is good? It's easy to tie, but it's also blank. Also easy to untie. So if I just pull that nice and quick, I've got my rope all the way undone. It is a very useful, very tight knot when you're using it, but also easy to untie. So you can get your boat off of the dock really quickly. Alright, so we've seen it kind of wide, we've seen it up close. Let's go wide again so we can do it one more time together. Again, you can tie it around your chair, you can tie it around your little brother, whatever you want. Step one, take the working end and go around your chair in this case. Step two, take the standing end or your tree and make a little hole by flipping it up underneath itself. Step four, the fox comes out of the hole, goes around the tree. Again, I'm going underneath the tree here to go around it. And it comes up and back into the hole. So it goes out, it comes out of the hole and goes back into the hole right the same way. Step four, pull it tight. Put the hole nice and tight on that standing end. Now you can see I can drag this all over the place. One of my favorite knots. In fact, I used to keep a piece of rope on me through all my scout meetings. Sometimes I still do this, and if you get really good, you can tie a bowline around yourself as if you're the chair. You do it one-handed. You create a little bowline and kind of pull on yourself. Not teaching the one-handed method tonight, but that's a fun way to do it. All right. So once you've done that knot and you've become good at it, you Bear Scouts out there, the only thing you have left to do is to teach it to a younger scout or sibling, and you'll have completed requirement number 8 for the Bear Necessities adventure. So you have to learn it, kind of explain what it's used for. Remember, where does it come from? Bow or bow for the bow of a boat. And then teach it to another younger scout or sibling and help them along with it. Fox comes out of the hole, goes around the tree, and back in the hole. And you've got your bowline. Fantastic. All right, moving right along into our Webelos and Arrow of Lights knots. We're going to teach you guys 2 of them, the 2 half hitches and the Taut-line hitch. We'll start with the 2 half hitches. Now this is a useful knot because you can tie it off to like a post or a tree trunk, or in this case it's going to be a chair again. And then it's very easy to tie and very easy to untie when you're ready, but it's going to hold tight while you're in use. So with the bowline, you're probably going to tie your boat up and then leave it there for a little while, so you want to make sure it's really tight and secure before you leave. The 2 half hitches, while it is going to keep whatever you've attached to it tight, it's a little bit easier to untie, and it's a little bit more temporary. All right. So a use of this is often with horses. If you're going to ride your horse up to say you're going to the Old Town Trading Post, well, you're not going to take your horse inside of the trading post there. You're going to tie it off while you go inside and then come back and be easy to untie, hop on board, and ride off into the distance. So that's a fun use of the 2 half hitches, is just be able to tie your horse off while you're going to the trading post. Many other uses, but that's what I like to think about it. All right, the 2 half hitches is a pretty easy one again. Let's switch back to my close-up view so you can see me tie it around my cup. All right. So the first step of the 2 half hitches is to find your working end. Got it here. We're going to go around whatever we're tying it to. So in this case, I'm actually going to go around this way. It'll be a little bit easier to see. All right, so just like the bowline where I had these 2 next to each other, but instead of making a loop with the standing end, I'm going to make that loop using the working end. So I'm going to go here in front of my standing end, go around and through that hole I just made. You see? Kind of like I was going to tie an overhand knot around this cup. But that's only the first of the 2 half hitches, so that's 1 half hitch. Now the second one is I'm going to tie it around the standing end once more. All right, so I'm going to go here in front of my standing end again, go around it and through that hole I just made again. There's my 2nd half hitch. And if I pull this tight, I'm going to cinch it up kind of there against my cup. And if I hold the cup still and I pull on this end, you can see it's going to hold nice and tight. And the way you can tell you did this one correctly is you see my working end, it's kind of sticking out to the side here. And then where is this other one coming out? It's going the opposite way. So we don't want them going the same direction on this knot. We want them coming out in opposite directions. See, I've kind of looped it around the standing end twice. There's 1, there's 2, 1 half hitch, 2 half hitches, and that creates your knot. All right, so that was my close-up demonstration. Let's kind of guide you through how to do it on the chair here. All right, so I've ridden up to the trading post. I popped off my horse. This end is going back to my horse's reins. I want to tie off my horse so I can go inside and buy an awesome slushie from our camp trading post, right? So let's take the end of the rope, this working end, and go around the top of my chair here. Now I've got to create that loop again, remember? So we take the working end, we go over the standing end, we go around and through that hole that we made, right here. There's our first half hitch. I can pull it up here if I'd like. My second half hitch, we're going to go around that standing end one more time. Going down further the standing end, and bring it around and up through that hole I just made. I've got this working end going off to the side here. The one that's going around my pole is going the other way. If I pull that nice and tight, you can see that's not going anywhere. My horse can stand here all day, not all day, just for a couple minutes while I run inside and grab my slushie and get on my way. All right. Again, the mark of a good knot: easy to tie, easy to untie. Fantastic. Let's do that together one more time. I take my working end. I go around my post. I go around the standing end and through that hole. I bring it down, I go around the standing end one more time, and then up through that hole I just made. There we go. Pull it nice and tight. There we are, 2 half hitches. Very easy knot, very useful knot. All right, one last knot to tie for this evening, and that is the taut-line hitch. Now the best use for this knot is when you're tying up your tent, setting up your tent to go camping for the week out at Fireland Scout Reservation or Beaumont Scout Reservation. And you want to make sure that you can keep your lines, which are keeping your tent up, nice and tight. Throughout the week, you might have had a windstorm, and you might have loosened up some of your ropes. Now the taut-line hitch means you don't have to retie it every single time. It means you can just slide the knot further up the rope to retighten it. It's going to keep whatever you've gotten tied down nice and tight. So let's go through how to tie it. Switching back over to our close-up so you can see me tie it real close. All right, so we're going to pretend like this cup here is my stake that's going into the ground. And I'm going to tie my rope around it, and then the standing end is going up to my tent. All right. So this is connected to my tent right here. There we go. This is connected to my tent. And this working end is what I'm going to use to tie around the standing end so I have my taut-line hitch. So with my 2 half hitches, I kind of tied it around itself with the 1 hitch and the 2 hitches. The taut-line hitch is the same way. It's tying around the rope itself. All right, this one is a little bit more complicated, but we'll do it, no problem. All right, here's my working end. I'm going to cross over the standing end just like I have before. I want to come up and through that hole that I made, just like I did with the half hitches, but I'm not going to stop there. Next, I'm going to go around one more time, so I have 2, count them, 1, 2 loops going around the top part, or what's closest to the stake here, of my my standing rope. Next, I'm going to take that working end, drop it over this little bit that's going off to the side here, and then go under my working end. All right, so now I've created 1 loop, 2 loops. I've crossed over and I'm about to make the 3rd loop of my taut-line hitch. To do that, as you can imagine, this working end is going to go right around and back through the hole I just made. You'll notice a theme for our knots here tonight. You're going to make little holes with your rope, and then you're going to tuck the working end through it and pull it tight. Now you can see that I have 3 loops here. 1, 2, 3. 2 of them are on the inside of my standing rope, and 1 is on the outside. Now here's the beauty of this knot. Once I've pulled it nice and tight, this rope can slide up and down to make that loop bigger or smaller. See, now I've pulled it out of frame here, so I've got a nice big loop. Or if I want to tighten it down, I'm going to push it up closer. That makes that loop smaller. And it stays firm on the standing end the entire time. So I can adjust that loop to be bigger or smaller, tighter or looser, connected to my tent here, just by moving that taut-line hitch up and down the rope. So that's what it's used for. It's to make things tighter or looser, depending on what your need is. Here we go, we'll untie
Jarrod,
it.
we have a question.
All right, our first question.
What would you use the square again?
The square knot is used for tying 2 ropes together. So it could be the 2 ends of the same rope, or it could be 2 ends of 2 different ropes to make 1 longer rope. So I showed earlier how I made my rope necklace here with a square knot, so I could tie both ends together. There we are, my little necklace. Or I could tie the 2 ends of 2 different ropes together to make 1 longer rope. I'll show that at the end. Great question. Alright, so we've showed the taut-line hitch. Let's move out to our wide view again so you can see me tie it around the chair here. Get another perspective. Awesome. So here's my working end one more time. I'm going to use this as my stake in the ground. I'm going to pull that working end around it. I've got my 2 halves of the rope kind of sitting next to each other. Remember, we're going to go over top of our standing end. Wrap it around and through that hole that we made. There's our first one, our first loop. We're going to do that same thing again, wrapping around the inside of that loop. Here we are. So we've done 1 and then 2 loops around the inside of that loop we've just made around our tent stake. We're going to pull it down towards the end of the standing end of the rope here. So it crosses over top of this rope here. We're going to pull that working end underneath our standing end. Then back up and through the hole it just made. So now I've got 2 loops on the inside, 1 loop on the outside. And then I just pull that knot nice and tight. Now you can see if I pull on my standing end, the loop doesn't get bigger or smaller, but if I take my hands and I slide it myself, I can make this loop bigger. And then again, tighten it back up by pushing that knot down. But if I'm not touching this knot here and I pull on the standing end, that's not going anywhere. Very useful knot for making things tighter or looser. You can make the rope longer or shorter too, so if you've tied up to a tree or something and you need a little bit more rope to finish off your knot at the end of it, you could pull the knot a little bit closer to the tree and make your rope a little bit longer. Fantastic. So it makes a loop that doesn't slide. You can tie it to your tent or to a big dining fly or a big canopy, so you can stake it to the ground and make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. Awesome. Let's go back down through the knots that we learned this evening, and we'll be finishing up for tonight. For you Weebles and Arrow of Light Scouts, remember the taut-line hitch and the 2 half hitches, plus the square knot that we learned earlier. Show that you can tie each of those knots and explain what they're used for to your parent or your den leader. You'll be able to mark off requirement number 5A of the Arrow of Light Scouting Adventures. And then the bowline, which we'll go over again in a second here, is for our bear scouts, requirement number 8 of bear necessities. And then the overhand knot and the square knot for our wolf scouts. Show that you can tie those. You'll have completed requirement number 5 of Call of the Wild. So one last time, going from the end to the beginning. We've got our taut-line hitch, which goes around our stake here, goes underneath and over into that hole for 1, 2, and then the third one around the standing end and pull tight for 1, 2, 3 loops and a sliding taut-line hitch. Our 2 half hitches. We're going to start over top of this one, go around and through that hole, and then down and through the hole again. Slide that up tight. 2 ends going opposite ways, 2 half hitches. The bowline goes around. We have our working end here. We make our hole by flipping the standing end up underneath itself. The fox comes out of the hole, goes around the tree and back into the hole. Pull that tight to make a loop that doesn't slip. It's not adjustable like the taut-line hitch, but it's going to hold tight until you untie it. Our square knot. Where we go right over left and around, and then left over right and around. Pull those tight. We have our square knot with the 2 ends poking out from the opposite ways, both on top, to get our square knot. Now you can see I've got my 2 ropes, no longer 3 feet, but since I've tied them together, that nice strong square knot, now 6 feet long. And last but certainly not least, the overhand knot, the playful knot, the one that I tie and untie all day long if I've got rope in my hands, where it goes just around, back down towards itself, over the standing end, and up through that hole. Some people call it the pretzel knot. Looks kind of like a pretzel. And there we are. That concludes our first Scouting at Home lesson. If you have any questions, feel free to comment in the box below. We'll keep up on any questions that come in. But I encourage you to practice these at home and to come up with creative ways to show how you're using them. We may not have boats and horses in our houses, but I'm sure you can find fun ways to tie these knots up. I encourage you to take a picture and share it with us here on our scouting social networks and use the hashtag #ScoutingAtHome to share all of your creations and what you've learned with our Cub Scout knots here tonight. We'll be posting some more resources for continuing to learn these knots at home and where you can find the different requirements for the Cub Scout adventures that we talked about here tonight. so that once you've completed them and shown your parent or your den leader that you've done your best, you can mark those off as completed. Thanks for joining us here, Lake Erie Council Scouting at Home Initiative. Really excited to be putting on some more of these for our Scouts BSA folks. Our next one will be starting his kids are going to be showing you how to fold the American flag and the Ohio state flag as another set of requirements for the Scouts BSA program. For our Arrow of Light Scouts that did those knots here tonight, and you show that you can explain what they're used for, the other half of the Scouting Adventures requirement number 5, which is B, is how to whip and fuse the ends of a rope. We'll post some resources on how to do that. If you are interested, maybe we'll do another live video of how to do that with the whipping and fusing to complete requirement number 5 for Scouting Adventures. So if you think that's an awesome idea, shoot us a comment here in the box, and we'll keep an eye on that. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and keep safe, keep washing your hands, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.